Hi everyone, this is For the Record, a series of conversations presented by Archival Studies faculty of the UP School of Library and Information Studies. In each episode, we talk about issues and experiences with records in our everyday life. My name is Ira Ben Rosro Cabal, and I'm one of the faculty members of Archival Studies in UP SLIS. And today, we're so lucky to have special guests for our special episode on archives and remembrance, especially that this month of September, we commemorate and remember the declaration of martial law in the Philippines 48 years ago. So today we have members of the academy. We have professors who are teaching history and literature and who have been involved in projects and research studies related to this very or highly contested historical period in the Philippines. So first of all, we have Professor Grace Concepcion, Associate Professor from the Department of English and Comparative Literature at the College of Arts and Letters in University of the Philippines, Diliman. Hi, Grace.
Hello.
Maraming salamat. No? Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. Talagang parang pumunta, no? So salamat po, Ma'am Grace, for accepting our invitation to be one of our guests. And our next guest is Professor Ruel Pagunsan, associate. Yes, he is an associate professor at the Department of History, also from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. So he's our historian in the house. So thanks so much, Sir Ruel. I know you're so busy with your course packs and all. So I hope you're able. Lahat tayo. I hope you're able to finish your course packs on time, diba? Okay, thank you. And last but not the least, we have Professor Rosemary Roque. Ang dami affiliations ni Prof. Roque, no? So let me read some of them. So she's currently an assistant professor at the Department of Philippinology at the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. And she's also the research chief of the Center for Labor and Industrial Relations, also in PUP. And currently, she's a secretary of the Committee on Archives of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. So hello, Ma'am Rose.
Hello po.
Hi. So nice to see you again, Rose.
Yes.
And thanks for accepting our invite. Ayan. So this special episode is very interesting and also very close to our heart. because there have been a lot of projects and several studies that all of us have done regarding martial law period and also regarding the Marcos regime. So probably let's have a bit of historical background to set the stage for our discussion for today. Maybe we can have Roel to talk about what happened 48 years ago, how martial law was declared, or why the Philippines was put under the martial rule during that time.
Okay, thank you, Ira. So the martial law of Marcos, or the proclamation at 1081, was declared on September 23, 1972. But the document, the proclamation, was signed 2 days before, September 21. The Batas Militar or martial law was the response of Marcos, no, for what he believed as the rising crime incidents in the Philippines, including the so-called threat of communism. So ultimately, for Marcos, I think yung pinaka final na hudyat, no, the ultimate na nagbigay kay Marcos ng idea to declare martial law was the ambush, no, that happened to one of his cabinet members, Juan Ponce Enrile, on September 22, 1972. No? But as we all know, this ambush was a stage, according to Enrile, as he confessed later on. No? So the ambush was September 22. This document was signed September 21, and martial law was declared on September 23. No? So, in other words, gusto ikabit ni Marcos yung martial law sa crimes, sa communism, no? As a legal justification, to give justification to this proclamation. But we should also remember that it was also an extension. No? It also served as an extension for Marcos, no, to continue serving as president of the Philippines. No? We should remember that the Constitution at that time only limits presidents to serve for 2 terms, dalawang termino. In other words, ibig sabihin dapat by 1972, no? Hanggang 1972 lamang dapat nakaupo si Marcos bilang Pangulo. And by 1972, of course, he declared martial law, batas militar, disguising this law as a to combat crimes and terrorism. But of course, it was an instrument, no, for him to prolong his stay in Malacanang. So I think yan yung general overview ng kanyang declaration of 1081.
Yes. Thank you, Roel, for that very concise explanation of what happened 48 years ago. And these are the things that probably the current or the newer generations do not have so much idea about. So especially nowadays that there have been a lot of contesting memories and perspectives regarding this period in our history. And when we talk about memory, it's highly connected to the things that, of course, what we remember and what we forget, what we see, what we know, and what we don't know. So that is why in this episode, we're also relating the concept of memory and history with archival materials and how archives can make us understand better our past and make us remember or even forget things from our past, and also for us to have that kind of reconciliation and collective healing, especially for those who were victimized by a repressive regime, and also for those who lived through this period. So having that kind of different memory acts and interpretation of this period of history. Um, there are projects, of course, there are studies done about this period for us to relay more information, more knowledge to current and future generations about martial law. So the two of our guests here, si Grace and si Rose, they did studies and they did also, and they've been doing projects relating to this martial law era and also about the Marquesas. So probably it would be best for us to hear some information, or if there's anything that they could share about the project that they're doing. Maybe we can start with Grace.
Okay. Hi. Okay, so what I did for my PhD dissertation was that, kasi yung background ko kasi is comparative literature, so very textual yung basis ko. So I looked into the autobiographies of martial law. Ito yung mga autobiographies, ito yung mga first-person accounts. And usually sa mga autobiographies, ang karamihan ng mga sumusulat nito ay yung mga survivors ng martial law. Although may isang autobiography na sikat, yung minention nga ni Ruel, yung autobiography or memoir actually ni Juan Ponce Enrile. At ginagamit ito para sa historical revisionism. In fact, yung isang account niya doon is that nire-retract niya yung statement niya at sinasabi niya na yung ambush na ginawa doon sa kanya ay totoo. Kaya nga nagkaroon ng 1986 na EDSA revolt kasi sinasabi ni Enrile na staged yung ambush na to or peke para pretense to declare martial law. Anyway, so may mga autobiographies na sinunulat ng mga survivors. Halimbawa nito ay The Subversive Lives ni mga Quimpos, yung kay Danilo Bismanos, tapos meron doon yung mga anthologies na Tibak Rising, Militant but Groovy. Tapos, ang ginawa ko is at hinanap ko yung mga authors na ito at pinuntahan ko sila at in-interview ko sila. So, oral history project ito. Tapos, yung tanong ko is, bakit mo ito naisulat? Ano yung naramdaman mo nung isinulat mo ito? Ano yung proseso? At ano yung epekto nito para sa iyo? So, gusto ko kasi malaman is, sige, so may text at available ito, nababasa ito. Ang tanong ko is, paano yung proseso ng pagsulat given na two ways na ito sinulat? Yung iba, na which is kind of rare, during the period of martial law, and then within the period or shortly after 1986, pinublish ito. So ito yung time of censorship and militarization during the time of Marcos. Pero karamihan ng mga autobiographies na lumabas ay around 2000s, 2010s, and quite recently, ito yung mga after ng martial law. So ang tanong ko sa unang group is, how were you able to write given the censorship and repression of the period? Yung sa pangalawang group, those who published decades after is, bakit ngayon lang nailabas yung sinulat niyo? So yun.
That's interesting. So, pwede ba naming malaman ano yung sagot? Siguro, sobrang kahit maliit na summary lang.
So, ano yung, what particular question?
Yung you've divided the two questions that you, yeah.
So yung during that period, kasi yung in-interview ko si Brother Carl Gaspar, sa Davao based siya, political detainee siya nung panahon. So, and prison diary yung sinulat niya. So yung sinulat niya ay ginamit abroad for human rights campaign para palayain siya. Kasi dito sa diary na ito, makikita yung mga everyday na struggles, yung mga pagmumuni-muni ng political detainee. So yung purpose nito is for the human rights campaign para ma-humanize ang mga political detainees na dinidemonize, na kaaway ni Marcos noong panahong iyon. And then, sinabi niya kung paano na smuggle yung mga sinulat niya. So, pati yung mga papel, yan na dapat maliit lang, piecemeal. Tapos pag bumibisita yung mga pamilya niya, ini-smuggle niya ito sa pagkain. Halimbawa nito, yung may pot of rice, okay, and then, akala mo kanin lang yun, pero sa ilalim pala, may nakatagong papel na nakabalot sa plastic. Yon. At bukod pa dito, yung kinakaibigan nila, yung mga prison guards, okay, mabibigyan ng payo, kasi yung mga prison guards ito ay mga bata pa talaga. At ni-smuggle out yung materials. For the other group, yung mga ngayon lang, in the recent years lang nakapagsulat, kasi it took a lot of time and distance for them to process kasi very traumatic sa kanila iyon eh. So, and may certain age is a story that they want their own grandchildren to remember and the future generations of Filipinos to remember. Lalo na ang triggering factor din dito ay ang vice presidential campaign din ni Bongbong Marcos.
That was in 2016, right?
So he's made historical revisionism dito. So they want to counter that. And even before, nung tumakbo si Bongbong Marcos, even way before. So yun.
I mean, yeah, I think I have some small ideas about your research because we were talking about it while you were writing it. Yeah, yeah, like before when we were doing our PhD. My topic is about martial law too, and I focused on the photographs and basically the stories about getting or being imprisoned or being political detainees. Pero meron silang universal na kwento and then and at the same time yung trauma. So meron silang collective trauma that they're still dealing with until now, even though decades later na-reinstate na yung democracy and technically wala nang martial law and meron pa ring trauma sa kanila until now. So very interesting findings. So Rose, I think si Rose naman is on martial law films, right?
Magaling.
Pwede rin naman. Alam ko marami kang ginagawa. So maybe you can share some of it with us.
Sige. Nagsimula ako talaga sa yung panahon ng People Power 2. Yung meron na ako undergraduate thesis tungkol sa Kodao Productions. Pero nung nag-masters, plano ko expand. So in general, tungkol sa mga political film collectives at gusto ko yung tanawin yung nakaraan. Kasi nga, merong grupo, bago yung, halimbawa yung group na nasabi ko yung sa Kodao, kasi meron sa members nila na member ng Asia Visions. And personally, yung itong Asia Visions, nakilala ko sila around mid-90s dahil nung nag-internship ako as a BA Communication Research student, sa kanila ako researcher. So doon muna yung context. Kasi 72, ano pa lang naman ako noon. Wala pa, hindi pa ako tao. 74 ako pinanganak. So parang, syempre di ba parang natural na tinitingnan na pag hindi mo naabutan, may assumption hindi ka magiging interesado. Pero mukhang sa atin naman, mga hindi pa tayo
hindi pa tayo
nabuhay noon. So ako parang yung singsimulan ko lang sa paano ako napunta doon nung binalikan yung nakaraan. Kasi nga may grupo na Asia Visions na may ilan sa kanila yung founders ng Kodao Production. And from there, syempre, yun nga, nakilala ko sila dahil may internship. So may idea ako sa grupo. Pero ang worry ko nung nagsimula ako sa pag-aaral nitong mga political itong video groups na to, is yung baka salat yung impormasyon. Pero nung sa proseso, natuklasan ko ang dami-dami talagang kwento. Kaya nung binubuo na yung MA thesis, mas nag-focus ako yung bulto nung salaysay dun sa thesis na pinamagatang Sineng Bayan. Ayun, ang mga kasama doon yung pag-aaral ng kanilang mga gawa. Mula nung 80s Asia Vision, sinama ko yung Alternative Horizons. So itong mga specific groups na to yung nabigyan ko ng focus. Pero kinonect ko siya dun sa mga current groups na digital period na. So inaral ko yung politics and tradition ng filmmaking na nagsimula nung dun sa thesis ko yung natukoy na simula ng ganong kumaga forerunners ng political filmmaking ay early 80s. So yun yung pinukusan ko na inaral. So hindi talaga siya pa nung masters na tumawid ako ng lagpas pa ng yung mas maaga sa 80s. Pero nitong matapos na akong graduate, tinawid ko siya. Meaning tawid pa atras. ang hinahanap ko na ngayon ay yung mga panahon nga na nung 70s. At meron yan, kung hahanapin natin halimbawa yung mga Marcos Audiovisual Collection na nasa pangangalaga na ng FDCP, ng Film Development Council of the Philippines, bilang division nila yung Philippine Film Archive. Yun, di ba, ating study yun, Ira? Nag-map out tayo, nag-mapping tayo ng saan, yun nga, yung mga Marcos AV collection, yung galaw ng mga 16mm, 35mm, yung mga ganong material. Ay, yun nga, tinukoy natin kasi gusto natin na may maging batayan. Paano itong mga audiovisual material ay maging mga dokumento na masasangguni, mababalikan. Hindi man siya kwento na nandun na lahat ng kwento sa isang reel ng pelikula or collection. Pero definitely, lagi kong sinasabi yung puzzle building pa eh. Dapat tong puzzle tungkol sa pinag-uusapan natin noon pa nabuo. Sadly, hindi pa. Ayun nga, 48 years na, di ba? Dalawang kembot na lang, golden year. Pero bakit tila tong, yun nga, kung puzzle building to, buo na ba yung binubuo nating puzzle? Talagang puzzle pa rin. Anyway, ang punto ko yun, yung audiovisual materials nga. So, ang hinanap ko this time, saan mahahanap yung counter narratives or basta yung letter of instruction number 1, di ba? Naka-apekto yon after ng declaration ng martial law, yan yung unang-unang ginawa yung sa media. Ang tanong, nung nagkaroon ng parang yun, repression nga sa media sa local, sino na yung nagbibigay ng ibang kwento, di ba? Nung panahon na yon. Ang pinupurso ko na ayun nga, pananaw, at nakakuha nga ako ng mga material, ay yung mga foreign journalists, hindi naman nila tayo nilubayan. Kino-cover pa rin nila tayo sa bansa natin. Kaya, yun na yung labas na sa MA thesis ko. Ito na yung current project ko, yung paglo-locate na mga AV materials na kaugnay ng Marcos period. Pero particularly yung early part of nung declaration, nalabas dun sa sinasabi kong nasa FDCP, yung bulk na state-produced, yung NMPC materials, yung National Media Production Center, labas sa kanila, nasan yung iba pa. So ayun, so may nahanap ko na mga foreign, halimbawa TV documentaries tungkol sa atin.
Yeah, that's sobrang interesting. Para siyang napakalaking puzzle na hindi siya mabuo-buo. No? Especially for archivists like me, na parang hindi naman kami burdened, no? Pero parang may added burden din na parang we should be starting to collect these materials and to find these materials because without these archival materials, paano nga naman natin may draw talaga, may interpret completely, well, if it's possible, to complete that part of our history. So probably tanungin natin historian natin, si Roel. So what do you think about the interpretation, yung current interpretation na meron tayo of this period? Having this lack of resources o yung kalat-kalat na resources, So ano yung masasabi mo regarding this?
Siguro basing on current initiatives, yung mga pag-aaral for the last 5 years or 10 years, I must say na unti-unti ay medyo lumalawak na rin yung iba't ibang side ng pag-aaral ng martial law. Mas tumatami na rin yung mga tao na lumilitaw, upang magbigay ng salaysay ng kailang karanasan, So I think mas fortunate yung mga scholar sa mga panahong yun na medyo mas matapang o mas matapang na humaharap sa sa iba't ibang tema, no? Sa iba't ibang aspeto kung paano ba isalaysay, ikwento, no? Ang martial law. No? So, and then we are also fortunate that because of the technology, no? Because of internet, there are ways of connecting with informants, no, with people na sa iba't ibang bahagi ng Pilipinas o iba't ibang bahagi ng mundo. So siguro in terms of how we collect data and in terms of the materials or in terms of researches done during this phase or period of Philippine history, I must say, no, batay sa akong obserbasyon, na mas marami talaga yung mga pag-aaral na ngayon, no? Mas malawak na yung mga interpretasyon at yung mismong support system na nakukuha ng mga academics, ng mga researchers para sa kanilang ginagawang pananaliksik o research I think nakatulong din yun, no? Because of course they're very political yung topic and any intimidation will somehow hindi makakatulong para i-pursue yung pananaliksik, no? So yun lang yung aking naobserbahan, no? Medyo lumalawak at lumalago yung mga materials at yung mga tema at yung mga pananaw sa pag-aaral ng batas militar sa Pilipinas.
Pero bakit po gano'n? Pero bakit kaya gano'n, no? Lumalawak yung pag-aaral, dumadami yung mga resources, but sometimes we think that these are still not enough for people to remember and to not forget what happened during the martial law period or during the Marcos regime. Because as we all know, last September 11, the House Bill 7137 was approved by the House of Representatives na para i-celebrate or gawing official na holiday yung September 11 sa Ilocos Norte, which is the birthday of Ferdinand Marcos. So what do you think of it, Grace? Do you think that is it fair, or do you think there's some kind of normalcy then na ganito yung mga nangyayari na it's part of commemoration, it's part of remembering, and also part of forgetting?
Kasi ang tingin ko naman dito is that this is my perspective kasi yung material ko ay autobiographies and when you deal with autobiographies, talagang makikita mo na napaka-specific and localized. As in yung personal mong karanasan na iuugnay mo sa malawak na community or sa collective memory. Kasi naman, nung panahon ng martial law is that madami kasing mga lugar na what you've mentioned sa Ilocos and also yung mga bailiwick nila doon sa sa Tacloban, sa Leyte, they were favored, okay? So may mga beautification projects doon. Tapos nun yung balita ko kasi nag-interview din ako sa Leyte na pinapapunta talaga ni Imelda Marcos na doon talaga siya lumaki yung mga ballets and feeling ng mga taga Leyte na nakatikim sila ng art yung ganon. Although on the other hand, in certain sites like in Mindanao, makita mo, lalo sa mga lugar tulad ng Arakan and Kidapawan, and even Davao to a certain extent, na matindi yung militarization doon, as in whole communities, yung sinistrafe at talagang mga pinapatay. And then doon naman sa Metro Manila or yung sites specific sa mga universities, may mga universities na nagkakaroon ng brewing unrest sa Marcoses. Among them is UP, PUP, and mga universities like FEU, Ateneo, so on and so forth. So meaning na ang dami-dami mga karanasan or ang dami-daming mga experiences and pwedeng sabihin natin na for instance, pag taga Ilocos or Leyte ka, for the sake of argument, hindi ka talaga nag-suffer nung martial law kasi binayayaan ka or nakakain ka ng Nutriban for instance, and you have fond memories there kasi ang Nutriban doon is localized in production. So pwedeng Nutriban na kinakain mo sa Mindoro ay hindi masarap, pero sa Ilocos, masarap naman siya. So, ganun yun eh. So, but when you deal with these memories na may ibang tao na nag-suffer sa martial law, may iba privilege, tingnan natin yung buong konteksto sa nagaganap noon. So that is when, studies in economics go in. So meaning na, bakit tinayo yung cultural center of the Philippines. Maganda siya, o yung lung center, yung heart center, ganon. Yes, may nakinabang doon, pero ano yung kapalit noon? Diba? So ito na yung pangutang sa IMF, World Bank, at yung mga tao na namatay sa mga projects ni Imelda Marcos. So meaning, you have to take a look at the whole holistic perspective na etong mga ito, they're there, akala na nakikinabang tayo dito, pero may hidden agenda dito. Particularly, ang nire-remember tungkol sa Marcos era, wherein there's a whole ideology surrounding that, erected that is surrounding that dictator, is yun nga, pag-preserve ng memory. Architecture yung isang magandang halimbawa dito kasi yung architecture is embedded in stone. Lahat tayo ay at one point nakapasok na or nakikita natin yung cultural center of the Philippines. So, immortalized din yung legacy ng mga Marcos dahil sa mga hakbang na ito.
Actually, I must say that Marcos was very conscious about it, about building his image, building a facade, or he parang parang he actually had this kind of message already that someday he should be remembered like this. So meron siya talagang idea of grandeur, no? Kaya talaga nagpatayo siya ng mga structures, and he had different projects. But then again, going back to Grace's point, you have to look at a wider context, especially the political economy during that time, and not just look at what is being explicitly shown, di ba? Kung ano lang nakikita mo maganda, yun na yun. But you have to look back and then step back a little na tingnan ninyo, ano nga ba yung mas malaking konteksto? Bakit ganito yung naaalala ng iba? Bakit ganito yung tingin ng iba? At ano nga ba talaga yung nangyari? And then we have to revisit these facts, no? So, bago tayo magkaroon ng iba't ibang mga perspectives din. Okay. So, kay Rose naman, I know you have ang dami mong projects kasi, di ba? So, and you have also dealt with different materials relating to martial law. When we started to map this AV materials nga, no, tinry natin hanapin yung provenance of this AV materials, which hasn't been done before. If you have one particular record or maybe an experience while you were doing this project or your research relating to martial law, so what is that record or experience or material?
Hindi dalawa. Dalawa.
Isa lang, pili ka lang.
Isa libro kasi, yung isa AV material. Yung nabanggit kasi kanina, yung mga Marcoses, may engagement kami na directly naming na-interview for AV audiovisual archiving class noong Feb 2014. That time Senator, hanggang ngayon, Bongbong Marcos, at ang kanyang nanay, yon. So, basta ang nutshell, conscious sila. Conscious ang pamilya nila. Mula sa tatay, yung pagda-diary, di ba? Alam natin yun, yung Marcos Diaries. Pero hindi lang siya sa diary. Pati sa photographs. Lagi ko nga in-example, di ba, yung collection ng photographs ng Marcoses na nasa National Library pa lang. Or yung NMPC speeches, yung publication ng lahat ng Marcos speeches. Di ba? Ilang volumes yon. Tapos, nung in-interview kami, namin yung mag-ina, makikita mo na nagko-continue yung ganun nilang pag-ensure na nado-document yung kanilang buhay. Dahil may sarili silang kay Bongbong nung time na yun, meron siyang videographer and photographer. At habang ini-interview siya, kumbaga, bine-document din niya. At yung kanyang ina ay may photographer. So ano yung memorable sa akin nun? Kasi binigyan kami ni Madam Imelda ng libro. Yung libro, yung pamagat ay Let the Marcos Truth Prevail. Memorable siya. Kasi, yun nga, hindi siya let the truth prevail. Let the Marcos truth prevail. So, doon pa lang mayroon na silang, yun nga, may pinanghahawakan. Nilibro pa nila. At ang unang-unang dokumento doon sa libro na yon ay yung sinasabing ang nanalo sa snap election ay hindi si Corazon Aquino, kundi si Ferdinand Marcos. Yun yung very first document doon. So, nagsastrike sa akin yun. Bilang, yun nga, archival material na libro. Yun. Yung, kaya ako gusto lang ng pangalawa, kasi yung sa Asia Visions, naka-encounter ako ng 16mm nila, na nung binuksan, wala na yung emulsion. Pag wala na yung emulsion, ibig sabihin, tunaw na, yun yung sinasabi nating naamoy nating suka, vinegar syndrome. Pero ako ang tawag ko doon parang oyster sauce kasi yung lagkit ng emulsion ay parang oyster sauce. So parang memorable din sa akin yun kasi nagsasabi noon na yun nga, yung yan ang nangyayari pag hindi natin, I mean may dahilan bakit nangyari yun. Pero ang punto, yun nga, paano matiyak na hindi ganon yung mangyari sa mga importanteng, archival material. Yun lang.
Okay, thanks. Oo nga. Kapag nakakita rin siguro, kaya iyak ako. Para, no, archives, no? Biglang masira. So how about you, Ruel? So do you have a particular record that you have used in your research or you have encountered?
Yung aking research interest sa kasalukuyan ay nakafocus sa environmental history. Mostly sa colonial period at least mga early years ng post-war Philippines, no? Pero sa mga after ng PhD, medyo sinisimulan ko na rin tingnan yung environmental history sa iba't ibang mga administrasyon, including na sa panahon ni Marcos, no? At siguro isa sa mga naka-strike sa akin ay yung kanyang Green Revolution program, no? So sa paghahanap ko ng mga policies na naging nangyari sa panahon niya, mga environmental programs, no? Yung naka-strike talaga sa akin ay yung Green Revolution program, no? Dahil siguro na rin sa isa ito sa mga programa that highlighted, no, his policy with regards to the environment, no. Pero medyo pahapyaw pa lang yung aking pag-analyze ng program na ito, no. Pero nakikita ko na ang programa na ito ay isa sa mga naging daan ni Marcos para makakuha ng iba't ibang mga foreign aids, no, upang suportahan ang inisyatibo, no, ng halimbawa scientific experiments on rice breeding, etc., again in connection with the Green Revolution program, no. Hindi pa final yung aking nakikitang mga dokumento, pero kung titingnan natin halimbawa yung kabuuan ng Marcos period na isa ito sa mga panahon na napakalaki ng pag-uutang ng Pilipinas, no, para sa akin hindi rin pwede rin ikabit, no, ang programa na ito sa maraming mga foreign debt, no, na maaring aralin, no, sa panahon ng rehimeng Marcos, no. At ibig sabihin maging hindi yung programa tungkol sa yung pag-uutang ay hindi lamang makikita halimbawa sa aspeto ng nutritional program niya, tulad ng Nutribam, o sa pagpapatayo ng infrastruktura ng mga highways, no, o pagtatayo ng mga ng film center or ibang mga hospital, no, kundi maging sa aspeto ng pangkapaligiran or environmental policies, no. So ibig sabihin dapat mas malawak yung ating tingin, no, sa naging schema, no, naging schema na na ginawa ni Marcos upang lumobo lalo yung ating pagkakautang.
That's
So, yun
true.
yung siguro yung pinaka-memorable sa akin so far na inaaral ko ang environmental policies and programs ng Rehimeng Marcos.
That's a very fascinating sharing, Ruel, no? Because I think that area hasn't been explored yet, especially when we talk about the Marcos regime, because usually the prevailing literature on the martial law period o yung panahon nga ng Rehimeng Marcos would be about ano nangyari sa mga political detainees, ano nangyari sa mga narratives nila, or ano yung nangyari dun sa mga tao who suffered from human rights violations, etc., etc. So your research or what you have discovered so far is another good angle ano, na makikita natin for us to have a wider understanding of this period, diba? So para hindi tayo masasabihan na, oh, saan galing yung source mo? Yan. So of course we have very credible sources, just like what you mentioned earlier. So from Rose, natapos na tayo kay Ruel. Of course, ito naman si Grace. No? Very interesting yung kay Grace because marami siyang oral history na nag-gather eh.
So yung pinaka-interesting and memorable na experience ko actually nung fieldwork when I was doing oral history, yung pagpunta precisely doon sa Mindanao. Kasi as I've mentioned before, na may dalawa akong autobiography piece, kinausap ko yung mga writers ito. At bukod pa dito is talagang pinuntahan ko talaga yung mga places na dinidescribe nila. For instance, yung pinakatumatak sa isip ko as nagpunta ako sa Kidapawan at doon nakita ko yung tombstone ni Father Tulio Favalli, who is the first, I think the first foreigner na pinatay nung panahon ng martial law, at siya din yung pari na nandun sa opening scene ng Ora Pro Nobis. Okay, so very gruesome yung nangyari sa kanya. So tingnan nyo na lang, you could look it up because it's really very gruesome. Yun. Sa Ora Pro Nobis. So yun. So doon ko nakita na iba talaga yung binabasa mo and yung connection sa binabasa mo sa reality na naka-anchor doon sa site of memory, na hindi lang siya isang fictional na tao, kundi totoong nangyari ito. At bukod pa dito, since nung time na yun is nagkakaroon ako ng budding interest doon sa mga memorializations, at kasama doon is yung museums and how museums would like try to preserve memory and construct a whole narrative of history. So yung pinuntan ko dito, aside from that, is the other counter narrative, yung narrative naman ng Marcos is doon sa Ilocos. Okay, so ito yung birthplace ni Marcos sa Sarat, tapos pupunta ka naman sa Lawag, okay, and then doon naman sa Batak. So ang ginagawa dito is that yung mga museums that are kind of like centered on the particular site where Marcos lived, and then until his tombstone. So from the cradle to the grave ito. So doon mo nakikita na how dictators really would want to construct an ideology of themselves even until their death. Kaya importante din kay Marcos yung para sa mga Marcoses, yung paglilibing sa mga libingan ng mga bayani. Okay? Kasi it kind of like concretizes na talagang bayani si Marcos, when in fact alam natin ito. So it's part of the whole construction, and this is something that is very visceral and tangible kasi it's an actual place, okay, that you go to and may certain history, and not only history but memory na nakaakibat dito, so that the inhabitants of that place would feel a connection to the Marcoses na taga barangay, taga baryo ko siya, at dito sa bar namin doon siya pinanganak, for instance, yung ganon.
Yeah, I remember you're the one who told me to go to these places, no? Because when I was doing my PhD research also on this period, Grace advised me to go to Batak, Sarat, and Lawag, yung Marcos Trail na tinatawag. And it gave me a different perspective then, because maganda rin na you see the narratives, the different narratives, and you also see the different narratives, or probably the counter narratives of what you have been seeing and hearing from your sources, or dun sa echo chamber mo, what's being discussed, no? And doon mo talaga makikita na iba yung pagtingin talaga sa kanya, and iba rin talaga yung memory ng mga tao in those particular areas. And it's purely understandable why. Diba? Kasi, o nga naman, taga doon ka, so people would respect you and see you as their apo, no? And then, iba yung respeto sa pamilya, aside from the benefits that they received during that particular period, but also yung kanilang prevailing consciousness, yung collective memory, kumbaga, halos talagang intact talaga siya, sobrang konkreto siya. And yeah, it was a good experience. Thank you, Grace, for advising me to go there to visit those places again. Okay. Actually, I've been there siguro mga 2 times na. Tapos on the 3rd time na binisita ko siya, iba na rin yung perspective ko. Kasi iba na yung nabasa ko, iba na yung narinig ko. And then I was able to speak with the locals. And then, syempre, as a participant observer, you should really respect their perspectives and how they view the family, the Marcos family, and how they view that particular period. So, kumbaga, respetuhan lamang. Okay. So, we already talked about different sources. May oral history, may films, may mga policy papers, etc., etc. May mga tao ka makakasalubong who can give you their memories or their thoughts about the martial period or about the Marquesas. So how about teaching history or teaching this particular period to students, no? Ang tanong ko nga madalas diyan, ano kaya yung ginagamit ng mga teachers when they're teaching martial law in school? So siguro si Roel yung makakasagot since he's a history professor. And then, do you think that our current education has enough access to these materials, or do they exert more effort to gather materials or write materials so that these materials could help them teach martial law in schools?
Yes, medyo maraming considerations when you really when you look at how martial law is being taught in basic education. Siguro ilan sa mga observations ko ay first, we should remember that sa basic education, Philippine history is taught in grade 5 and grade 6, no? Series ito, no? So sa grade 5, ito yung pre-colonial to colonial, no? And then ituturo lamang yung martial law sa grade 6, no? Including yung post-war topics pa, no, sa Philippine history. So based sa ganitong kalakaran, doon ako pwedeng magbigay ng aking observation, no, na yung pagtuturo ng martial law ay it also depends on the textbook, no? And this textbook is also is of course governed by the Department of Education, no? So at ang mga guro na gusto magturo nito ay of course will always depend sa kung ano ang meron sa textbook, no? Kung mayroon mang nag-exert ng effort to really, I think, add more details or to get more stories or to relay more stories, no? Para mas malalim ang pagtuturo ng martial law sa mga basic education students, siguro meron, no? Pero in general perhaps, no, pwedeng masabi na kung ano yung meron sa textbook na ito ay ito na rin ang maaring ituro, no? At syempre, another consideration is nakakaabot ba sa martial law period ang mga guro, no? Nung nagkakanda kami ng ng mga seminar workshop on Philippine history, nagtuturo kami, no? Isa sa mga na-encounter kong mga narratives ng mga guro is mukhang hindi na nakakaabot minsan, no? Sa martial law period, no? So in other words, once mo lang makuha ang Philippine history series, no, sa basic education, and when you miss this, or when you go to, kung hindi ka na kung isang bata hindi na makakarating ng kolehiyo, no, syempre you will add to this, kasama yan sa consideration kung paano nga ba, bakit nga ba, no, parang hindi masyadong malalim ang pagtingin ng mga Pilipino, no, sa martial law, no, at isa ito sa ilang mga kadahilanan, no, on why we encounter problems about memorializing martial law, no. However, nag-effort coming from the UP History Department, no, in the last years, no, ay nag-effort ang aming departamento, no, na ang pagtuturo ng kasuan halimbawa ay para sa mga history instructors ay dapat makaabot tayo ng martial law, no, or makover natin yung martial law sa ating pagtuturo sa ating syllabus. At the same time, every year the history department is helping, no, through series of activities, through various activities, no, like seminars and symposia, no. We try to invite various speakers, no, to talk about this martial law, no. So para dagdag exposure na rin, no, sa mga estudyante sa loob ng campus, no. Now, hopefully sana sa ibang mga pamantasan din o sa ibang mga paaralan din ay nangyayari ito, no. Pero yun, wala naman akong material or detalye kung paano nga ba talaga yung kabuuan, no, isang masalimuot na paksa, no, yung pagtuturo at paghahanda, no, so from textbook making to how it is being taught, I think is a very complicated process. Na kung aware tayo ay siguro dapat mabibigyan natin ng pansin, no, bilang mga guro, no, ng kasaysayan.
So, Ruel, how do you think it should be taught to the students? Kunyari, di ba, you're teaching kasaysayan 1, or paano mo siya tinuturo, or how do you think it should be taught?
Para sa akin, tinuturo ko ito bilang isang yugto, no, sa ating kasaysayan na nagbigay ng maraming mga tanong, no, tungkol sa aspeto ng pag-aaral ng ating demokrasya, ng ating karapatang pantao, no, ng ating pagiging bansa, no. Of course, maraming mga iba't ibang mga kwento mula din sa mga magulang ng mga estudyante, no. Kaya nais ko rin bigyan when I teach martial law, no, I make sure that they're also exposed to various facts, no. So isang paraan ng pagtuturo dito ay i-expose ang mga bata sa tinatawag na primary sources o primary documents. Tulad din ng ginagawa ko sa ibang periods in Philippine history, no. So if there are available primary sources, why not expose students to these primary sources, no, so that sila mismo ay makita nila, mabasa nila, no, na ay oo nga, no, hindi lang pala ito kwento lamang ng historian, no, hindi lang pala ito interpretation ng historian, no, na ako kahit hindi ako professional historian, when I read the documents, no, ito yung sinasabi ng dokumento, no, at they can generate their own analysis, they can generate their own explanation to the period. So in other words, itong mga primary sources na ito, they will connect the students to the past, no. At least sa aspekto na yon, no, meron silang window to the past, no, at binibigyan ng sariling agency ang mga estudyante to study these primary documents. So para sa akin, very important ang primary documents, no, in teaching martial law in the Philippines.
Thank you, Ruel. Ang ganda ng perspective ng ating historian and professor of history. You know, at least as researchers and as archivists, di ba, alam namin kung ano pa yung pwede, parang nagkaroon kami ng idea tuloy na ano pa yung pwede namin o dapat namin gawin. Especially that itong period of history na to ay kailangan talaga na mas maintindihan, lalo na mga kabataan, ano nga ba ang nangyari, and lalo na rin yung magkaroon sila ng critical thinking about the things that they're saying in social media or the things that they're hearing from their siguro parents or mga friends, etc., etc. So I think using these primary sources, no, yung mga sources nila Grace, sources ni Rose, ano, yung mga sources na na-encounter ko rin, this would be really helpful and useful for the more critical and deeper understanding of this contested period nga. Natawag nilang very contested and highly disputed historical era dito sa Pilipinas. So, siguro may tanong lang din ako kay Rose, no? Kasi si Rose, talagang naghahanap siya ng mga materials, mga AV, no, regarding this period. So, why are you doing it? So, what do you think is the importance of these materials para sa mas malalim na pag-unawa sa martial law? Bakit AV?
Kasi conscious sila eh. Kasi, yung sabi ko lang sa inyo, may Marcos truth sila eh. So, paano mo, di ba, sabihin nating tapatan, yung isang napaka-systematic na tapos in power pa. Di ba? I mean, nawala yung ouster, pero nagbalik eh. Nung nakatungtong uli sa Pilipinas, imbis na mapursige yung social justice, di ba? Ayan na nga, makikita na natin, nasa pwesto ulit. So, kailangan masigasig. So parang, kaya lang, yung gusto ko na lang mabilis na rejoinder nung nababanggit ninyo kanina, di ba? Like si Grace, nung sabi niya, natural na ilibing na sa libingan ng mga bayani. Kasi nga, cycle yan na nagsimula sa may malakas at maganda. Di ba? At mga Marcos Esto, di ba? Sila yon. So pati yung pagpapangalan sa ating bansa na Maharlika, it's lahat, buo yung kwento nila. At consistent sila. Not necessarily yun yung truth nga. Pero sabi nga, di ba, pag ang mali, ulit-ulitin mo. Nagiging tama na. So ibig sabihin, kailangan conscious din yung action. Pero ang gusto ko lang sabihin, ito pang ginagawa ko mainly, parang yun nga, out of pocket, sabi nga, pro abono. Basta ang point, sa kaso ko, may supportang nakukuha, pero in general, independent initiative to. Pero kung may munting ambag ang ganitong inisyatiba, what more kung mulat na nasa pwesto, yung may political will yung dapat magtiyak. Imagine the resources. Although ngayon, sige, meron tayong yan, tatayuan, di ba daw, ng Freedom Museum sa loob ng UP. Di ba, nagpa-contest na sila ng architectural design ng museum. Pero ang point, alam nating kailangan pang magpursige. Kasi yun nga, ito yung matagal na dapat. Pero ngayon lang mas nagagawa. Pero alam nating kulang na kulang pa. Kaya, yun nga, yun yung punto ko. Conscious kasi sila. Dapat tapatan mo ng systematic din, programmatic, na conscious na yun nga, effort. At hindi talagang kailangan tulungan yon, private, individual initiative, pero kailangan pa rin talaga yung mas solid na.
Yeah, so there should be a unified effort that just
last ko na lang, tricky pa to kasi kung maalala niyo nung October 2018, nag-red tag ng schools. May 18 schools na sinabing nagpapalabas ng mga martial law films daw para ibagsak yung gobyerno. So, ibig sabihin, imagine, di ba, nagsisikap ka kasi topic natin to, paano magturo. Eh yun, nagpapalabas ng, di ba, ng pelikula, nare-red tag, nale-label na So, ang ano niya talagang imbis na magpursige ka lang, di ba? Mahirap nga daming kailangang gawin, tapos ayan pa, di ba? Siyempre, mapapa-atras yung iba, di ba? Matatakot. Imbis na magturo na with all your heart and, di ba, soul. Parang, di ba, yun Kaya talagang, talagang, ako doon ako ng, yun yung motivation ko, na walang bitawan, hanggat kaya, habang kaya.
We could really feel your passion and your drive. Talagang hindi nadadampen yung spirits ni Rose. So si Grace naman, so how do you think martial law should be remembered? Kanina yung tanong natin kay Ruel, how it should be taught, how it should be discussed. So how do you think martial law should be remembered?
Well, ang dami na nagsasabi that, and true enough, that it is a contested and controversial period in history when in fact it shouldn't be. Okay? Kasi kung early on enough and kung, maganda ni assertion ng memory natin na it's not a golden age, there were lots of rampant human rights violations at ninakahuhan tayo ni Marcos is kung may consensus tayo doon is hindi siya magiging contested. But as it is, nakita mo yung historical revisionism na nagaganap. Well, the best way I think for it to remember is that martial law, kaya nga may hiwalay na ito na republic, di ba, yung Third Republic until kay President Macapagal and then the Marcos dictatorship kasi what characterizes dictatorships is that they have a whole ideology that is built around the dictator. Kaya nga new society kasi ang sinasabi origins of the Philippine nation is nagsimula kay Marcos. Kaya nga nire-write nila yung malakas at maganda myth and yung Tadhana Project even to rewrite the history of the Philippines para makapasok doon si Marcos. So another thing that you could look at is that the whole fakery, parang siyang emperor's new clothes na ganda-ganda ng narrative, ang ganda-ganda ng mga legacy kuno ni Marcos. But if you rub it all out, if you disrobe it, makita mo that it's all fake. Yung fake medals, okay? Yung fake heroes, okay? Yung fake history, yung kung ganun ba. So I think ganun dapat natin makita siya na parang emperor's new clothes, di ba? It is not a golden age. There is a whole revisionism going on, distortion of truth that is all shrouded in fakery. So yun lang.
Thanks, Grace. We could go on and on forever, kapag pinag-usapan natin itong period na to and the things that we keep on discovering regarding this. Sabi nga ni Grace, dapat hindi na contested period If in the first place, alam na natin, But since many hashtags have emerged from this conflicting views, perspectives of the public regarding martial law and the Marcos family, kung meron kayong hashtag, syempre yung mga kabataan ngayon, gusto nila lagi shortcut ang lahat, no? Kung meron kayong hashtag like hashtag never again, hashtag never forget, hashtag Marcos not a hero, yung September 11, nag-trending naman yung hashtag araw ng magnanakaw, pero syempre meron pa rin hashtag Marcos pa rin. Diba? So, laging, may laging dalawang side naman o maraming side ang mga bagay-bagay.
Karugtong ata yung Marcos pa rin.
So, if you would be making or creating your own hashtag that would concisely describe how you feel about this period, what would it be? Sige, sino gusto mong start? Sino gusto mong bigay ng hashtag muna?
Sige, ako na muna. Siguro sa akin, it would be hashtag not a golden age. Kasi I think na sa opinion ko, sa nakikita ko, kaya ang daming naakit doon sa legacy ni Marcos is dahil daw sa economic boom. Okay, at doon nakita natin yung role ng architecture and infrastructure. Kasi kung may pinapatay yung building, di ibig sabihin nun, may pag-unlad at may progreso, lalo na ito ay mga buildings na magagamit natin like yung Lang Center, yung Cultural Center of the Philippines, yung San Juanico Bridge. So it's really the infrastructure. So yun. Although, ang criticism ko din sa sarili kong hashtag is that it's not a golden age. Parang defensive din siya. So meaning that makikita mo din dito na yung whole discourse is being dictated or being directed by the historical revisionism efforts nga ni Marcos. So parang nakita mo na those who want to teach, yun nga, history na yung truth na is not a golden age, that there are lots of human rights violation, parang sila pa yung napupunta sa defensive. Precisely, I think because they're the ones who are being attacked. Tuloy nga na-mention ni Rose na, yun nga, a threat to academic freedom, na kapag nagpalabas ka ng mga martial law na pelikula, ni-red tag ka. So, but I think this is the reality that we have to confront and that we have to face. So, yun.
Thank you, Grace. So, hashtag not a golden age. Sino kayo next? Rose? Ano yung hashtag mo?
Siyempre, may mga pinapatrend na hashtag. Nabanggit mo nga kanina.
Okay.
Kasama mo pa dyan yung mga stop the killings at saka artist fight back. Di ba nagpa-plug? Pero ako, yung sa akin ay hashtag archives empower.
Okay.
Bakit? Kasi alam natin na yun nga, pag sa mga alaala na makukupkop, masisinop sa mga archive, pag tinaguyod natin to, masasalin talaga yung mga nakaraan hanggang sa kasalukuyan, hanggang sa salinlahi. So, at yun yung hindi magpapakalimot sa atin. So, isa yun sa ambag. Siyempre may iba pa na mga, sabi nga, memory institutions. Yan ang mga natutunan ko sa pagiging estudyante ng library science. Yes.
Nagbabalik.
Yeah, seryoso. Pero ayun, kaya naman, yun. Kaya talagang yung pagtaguyod nung yung archiving ay hindi binibitawan. Lalo na sa lipunan natin na hindi siya na-appreciate pa. Tulad ng paano to, katulad ngayon nagpunta sa, halimbawa, research sa Europe. Ay, magsasawa ka. I mean, di ba, kulang ang oras, mapuntahan lang ang isa, hindi lang naman isa yung archives nila. Katulad nung sa Netherlands, 1 million hours of digital materials na noong 2017, yung meron sa Netherlands Institute of Sound and Vision. So, isa lang yon na archive. So, imagine mo kung papalakasin yung mga ganitong institution. At yun nga, may access, hindi lang, natutunan ko rin, hindi lang binobodega ang alaala, kundi may access. Talagang empowering to. Kaya yung effort ngayon ng itong saliksik, ini-ensure din na may access. Kaya nga nag-film screening sa school. Para yun nga yung nare-research siya. Yun nga lang, ang challenge talaga, yun nga, wag papadala dun sa mga red tagging kasi mananalo pa rin sila.
And at the same time, this archive should be preserved, no? So imagine, should be searched and preserved because you cannot make them accessible without proper preservation. So ang laki talaga ng impact, no? Kahit hindi lang yung archives na papel or audiovisual or electronic archives, maski yung archives that you can get from oral history interviews, so the narratives, the personal narratives of people, once you archive them, then you can make them more accessible to more users now. So yun talaga yung nilalaban natin in the practice of archival studies, even in the theory of archival studies, because, archives is not just a bunch of dusty documents na nakabodego lang. It's highly political, it's highly social, and marami kang mareresolba nga daw ng mga social and political issues when you just maximize the use of these archival materials. Diba? Okay. So last naman natin, si Ruel. Ano kayo hashtag ni Ruel?
Hindi, tinagalog ko lang yung isang hashtag, pero para sa akin importante yung hashtag nito. No? So para sa akin, hashtag Marcos hindi bayani. No? Kasi pag sinasabi mong bayani, lalo na sa konseptong Pilipino, importante nito, di ba? Sa ating lumang kasaysayan hanggang ngayon, ang bayani hindi lang yan matapang. Ang bayani ay para sa akin hindi lang siya direct translation ng term na hero. May kultura, may kasaysayan, no? At yung paggamit nito ay simple pag-connect na rin sa taong bayan. No? So ang bayani ay isang tapat. Ang bayani ay hindi lamang matapang, kundi isang tapat na nakisilbi sa bayan. No? So sa pag-emphasize, nabanggit kanina na isang malaking ideolohiya yung pagbubuo kay Marcos. No? At para sa akin, dapat isang ideolohiya din, no? Yung maaring pantapat. No? At pwede tayo magsimula sa kung paano ba yung ating konsepto ng bayani. No? At mula sa pagtuturo ng aghampan lipunan sa grade 1 ay ipasok na ito. Ano ba yung katangian ng isang bayani? So kahit hindi mo banggitin ang diktador, hindi mo banggitin ang taong yan, no? Meron ka ng pagpapaunawa at pagtuturo, no? Na ay ang gusto kong maging leader natin na isang bayani, at ang bayani ay may ganitong katangian at may pagmamahal sa bayan, etc. etc. So para sa akin, ito yung may kurot sa puso na hashtag.
Totoo. Iba rin talaga yung yung salitang bayani, no? Pwede siyang parang bayan, tsaka parang napakalaki ng impact pag naririnig mo ang salitang bayani. Para lagi siyang na-associate sa taong marangal, matapat, naglilingkod, wholeheartedly, di ba? So parang ganun yung ating connotation regarding that word. So, ayun po. So meron tayong hashtag, ano yun, Grace?
Not a golden age.
Not a golden age. Yung kay Rose. Ano yung hashtag mo, Rose?
Hashtag Archives Empower.
At yung kay Ruel naman,
hashtag Marcos hindi bayani.
Hindi bayani. So, papatrendingin natin yan. So, tingnan natin kung may papatol sa hashtags natin. But let's see, let's see. So maraming salamat po sa inyo, Ruel, Grace, and Rose. Thank you so much. I know you're so busy, pero pinagbigyan niyo ang aking request na mag-guest dito sa For the Record. And we all hope that we will achieve our ultimate goal. No, yung goal natin na mas maunawaan ng mga tao, ano nga ba talaga ang nangyari during that period, at huwag tayong basta-basta magpapaniwala sa mga nababasa natin o yung mga naririnig natin. We have to be really critical. And yeah, it would be helpful if we have an open mind na ma-absorb yung mga iba't ibang mga facts. But we should know to filter them and also to evaluate the sources that we're reading, especially in social media, lalo sa mga bata ngayon. No? And of course, we should realize, sabi nga ni Rose kanina, we should realize the importance and the power of archives in setting the facts straight, and also to avoid having, ayoko sabihin na sige, yung pagkakamali natin na nagawa in the past ay maulit-ulit natin in the present and in the future. So marami pong salamat ulit, Ruel, Grace, and Rose.
Thank you.
Yay,
Okay.
salamat. Sana maulit ito. Yay.
Sige.
Next episode ulit,
Okay.
Okay talaga si Grace.
Okay.
So thank you so much. So this has been For the Record. For the Record is brought to you by UPSLIS. To find out more about our school, just visit our website at upslis.info. So thank you for watching, and do not forget to subscribe to our channel and our social media accounts. So hope to see you again, and bye. Thank you. Keep safe.